Participation in the life of the higher world finally means to consciously cooperate with the inhabitants of these spheres. What a bliss! You may work together with the greatest souls of all times, with your heroes on their great work. Could there be a greater joy than that during the fulfillment of a mission of the Brotherhood? Can I be so fortunate as to have the privilege of helping my teachers? Teacher, let me become thy helper. You help them, but even more, they help you. Search for invisible friends. The appearance of friends from the higher world, from the supermundane, will be a strong support. Sometimes you know them, but generally their name is unknown to you. Only the joy felt in your consciousness indicates their presence. Do not attempt to learn their names, for they discarded earthly names long ago. May the number of these protectors be great. They value all luminous striving, and nothing will divert their benevolent help when they recognize a developing achievement. They help where trust is strong. May the benevolence of the invisible friends abide with you. It is not only the visible friends who help, but even more the invisible ones. The invisible helpers protect you from danger. People are reluctant to imagine how many dangers are taking place around them. How many times have the higher forces and participants in the subtle world saved them? Beautiful is the tension of the great service, when invisible co-workers gather around it. They strengthen the armor, protect from arrows, and illumine the path. Man can advance as if winged. He has gained numberless co-workers, and they are obedient to hierarchy. For this protection, you should be grateful. How do we know whether at this very moment we might need to be saved from something? Do we really know what threatens us? We are content to think that our day has been a peaceful one, but fail to see that the poisonous viper lurking behind us has been driven away by an invisible savior. Let us express our gratitude to invisible saviors. The Brotherhood is always on the lookout for suitable co-workers and a future-orientated construction. Each wholesome transformation of life will be noted and supported by us. Any work welcome to the hierarchy, even the smallest, is encouraged. Every worker receives help from the subtle world. People would be much more successful if they realized that this invisible cooperation exists. Scoffers will say, Can it be that even carpenters, farmers, and masons receive help from the subtle world? This mockery is out of place, for each appreciated labor receives help. Help from above will mostly be not of a material, but of a spiritual nature. The help of the higher beings is usually accomplished by spiritual means, but the help can also be material. Tradition often relates the appearance of dear ones who came to give useful advice, but stated that they were allowed to help only once. Similar indications can be found among different peoples throughout the ages, and such testimony is quite true. You must firmly trust in this support, go to meet it and accept it. Help can be immeasurably increased where there is no discontent, complaints, depression, and mistrust. People, give your invisible helpers the opportunity to stretch out their hands. So many luminous wings have withered away because of human distrust. It is difficult to effect cooperation with the subtle world. Many dwellers in the subtle world would like to offer their knowledge, but they are denied the opportunity because of various prejudices and fear. What a wonderful idea! There are indeed this worldly, physical, and otherworldly subtle beings working together on a common project. In each work, there is acting a collective of both earthly and supermundane co-workers. Corresponding vibrations create cooperation. You know how certain individuals from the subtle world who are close to us act to assist a common task. Even not so long ago, they were unable to serve the common purpose because of difference of vibrations. But now your vibrations and their endeavors for communion make them useful co-workers. Thus is created useful labor in common. It is the more useful because the adversaries have similar co-workers. As we have shown earlier with the beautiful painting of the Battle of Lepanto, subtle beings even take part in earthly wars, such as, for example, Helena Röhrig, called Urusvati by the Mahatmas, in the subtle body. Urusvati knows what it means to be amidst earthly battles while in the subtle body. Urusvati can testify how swiftly and safely she was able to fly amongst the combatants. You can imagine how often we participate in such earthly battles. We are invulnerable to human weapons, yet can suffer injuries from the hierophants of the dark forces, whose ruinous attacks fill space. Such invisible battles are not fairy tales. It is one thing to send a ray from the tower, but it is an entirely different thing to fly to participate in the righteous battle in space. Thus, beyond the limits of the material plane, there takes place a real cooperation between heaven and earth. People do not realize that supermundane friends are trying to save them from misfortune. They will not admit that someone is trying to help them solve difficult problems in their lives. The earthly mind cannot imagine the cooperation that exists beyond the boundaries of earth. In the broadcasting The Brotherhood of Shambhalas, we had cited many examples of the intervention of the Mahatmas in world affairs. Likewise, they, or their agents, will also help you with your small personal matters, provided, of course, that you promote the aims of hierarchy and carry out their orders. Since each man carries his own mission, no one can be left without help. Cooperation with us brings all that is needed. Through such a cooperation, a true, non-material, supermundane and supertemporal community is formed. People may ask whether it is confusing to work with non-incarnated entities and densified astral beings. Not in the least. Such collaboration takes place on the plane of unified consciousness, and because such co-workers are of similar mentality, the unification forms a true community. The ideal of uninterrupted work in all worlds becomes reality. Before birth in the higher world, during all your incarnations on earth, and after death again in the world beyond, you are working together uninterruptedly with always the same beings on always the same great work, on the new construction, on the building of a new stage of evolution. Can you give a practical example of such a work over centuries? On vacation in Greece, we were sitting one evening in a large square at the foot of an ancient fortress of the Knights of St. John. Locals and tourists were enjoying themselves, having dinner, drinking wine, and children were frolicking late into the night. Suddenly, I had a tiny vision, just a very brief flash of thought. I saw myself, many centuries ago, with other Knights of St. John in our armor, on duty up at the castle, making our tour and standing on guard. A picture of grandeur and seriousness. The fortress and the knights were protecting the feasting crowds from the threat of the Turks. In the same way, you may regard yourself and your task. You do not live down in, but above the village on the holy mountain. You are a member of the hierarchy. You share their responsibility for the welfare of humanity, whether you are already a knight or just a page. In this position, you can take part in the usual pleasures to a very limited extent only. This is true not only in this life, but has been true for thousands of years, through many incarnations, on all material and non-material planes of existence. You are working together with the Brotherhood in eternity. You can consciously and purposefully summon your supermundane friends and co-workers. When man takes upon himself communion with the higher world, he is truly daring. But this daring is sacred. The subtle world listens to these calls and understands their significance. Such communion attracts a multitude of listeners, co-workers, as it were. There is a panacea available to everyone. He can disperse any influence by reaching out in thought to friends. Man has friends not only on earth. He can summon many faithful co-workers from the subtle world as well. Through selfless service, you attract high helpers. With bad thoughts, feelings, words, or deeds, however, you draw towards you malevolent beings from the lower layers of the subtle world. Radiant striving can certainly attract help. This is not a moral admonition, but a scientific fact. Not a single earthly action remains unanswered on the part of the subtle world. Each earthly thought arouses either joy and assistance or malevolence and destructive sendings from the subtle world.